Okay, class, today's lesson is on solving quadratic equations. This time we're going to utilize the square root method. So here are the 4 simple steps that you should follow. So number 1, you want to isolate the perfect square. Then you want to take the square root of each side. And when you do that, you can't forget the plus or minus sign. Then you're going to simplify the radical, and then you're going to get x by itself. So let's demonstrate this with a few examples. So example number 1, we're going to have x squared minus 10 is equal to 26. Okay, so first step is to isolate the perfect square. We see that the perfect square is this, the x squared, so we need to get this minus 10 over to the other side. And to do that, we're going to add 10 to both sides, and we're left with x squared is equal to 36. Okay, now we're going to take the square root of each side. Okay, and then we're going to simplify the square root, or in this case the radical, and now we get x is equal to 6, but because we are dealing with quadratics, we need to recognize that there's also a positive 6 and a negative 6. Okay, so in other words, x is equal to 6 or x is equal to negative 6. And these are our answers. Okay, moving on to the next example. Let's say we've got 2x squared minus 10 is equal to 40. Okay, again, we want to isolate the perfect square. We see a perfect square here, so we need to take a couple steps here. First, we're going to move this negative 10 to this side, to the other side, and by doing that, we do that by adding 10 to both sides. So we get 2x squared is equal to 50. Okay? Now, we still need to isolate this x squared because there's this 2 in front of it, so we need to move this 2 to the other side. Because this is a product, we need to divide both sides by 2 or multiply both sides by 1/2. However you do it, you're going to end up with x squared is equal to 25. Okay, now that we have the perfect square isolated, we can take the square root of both sides, and we get x is equal to plus or minus 5. Okay, so x is equal to 5, or x is equal to negative 5. Okay, let's try another example. It's a little bit more difficult. And let's say we've got x minus 5 squared minus 6 is equal to 30. Okay, again, we want to isolate the perfect square. Okay, and we're going to do that by moving this negative 6 to the other side of the equation, and we do that by adding 6 to both sides, and when we do, we're left with x minus 5 squared is equal to 36. Okay, now this quantity is squared, so we can take the square root of that like this and like this, and we get x minus 5 is equal to plus or minus 36. Okay, now this is where things are a little bit different. We're going to take 2 different approaches. We're going to set x minus 5 equal to positive 6, and we're going to set x minus 5 equal to negative 6. And now we solve both options. With the one on the left here, we have a negative 5. To move that over to the other side of the equation, we need to add 5 to both sides. And when we do that, we get x is equal to 11. And then on this side, we need to do the same thing. We need to add 5 to both sides to move this negative 5 to the other side of the equation. And when we do, we get x is equal to negative 1. Okay, so that is our answer. Okay, next example. We have 3 times the quantity x plus 7 squared minus 2 equals 22. Okay, so again, we want to isolate the perfect square. We see that the perfect square is right here. So we need to do something with this negative 2 first. And what we want to do is move it to the other side of the equation. To do that, we need to add 2 to both sides. And when we do, we're left with 3 times the quantity x plus 7 squared is equal to 24. Okay, we still need to isolate the perfect square. We have this 3 here. We need to move it to the other side because this is a product, meaning we're multiplying. There's a multiplication going on. We have to divide both sides by 3 or multiply both sides by 1/3. Both are the same thing. Okay, and when we do, we get x plus 7 squared is equal to 8. Okay, now that we've isolated the perfect square, we could take the square root of each side. Okay, and we're left with x plus 7 is equal to, now we have the square root of 8, which is really the square root of 4 times 2. Okay, the reason I did that was because I wanted to pull out a perfect square. We know that the square root of 4 is 2, and therefore this equation now becomes x plus 7 is equal to 2 square root 2, and we have to remember the plus or minus sign. Okay, plus or minus. So now we're going to do the options here, and we're going to set this up as x plus 7 is equal to the positive 2 square root of 2, and x plus 7 is equal to the negative 2 square root of 2. Okay, now in both cases we're going to need to move this positive 7 over to the other side, and to do that we need to subtract 7 from both sides. Okay, same thing here, we need to move the 7 to the other side, and we're going to subtract 7 from both sides, and when we do, we get x is equal to negative 7 plus 2 square root of 2, or x is equal to negative 7 minus 2 square root of 2. Okay, and that is our answer. Okay, hopefully those 4 examples made sense to you. If you're confused on any of this, please go back to the recording and listen to it again. Thank you.